Martin Brooks, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us all the way from across the pond over in the UK. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. So it's morning for me, evening for you. I'm thrilled to have the chance to chat with you today. And we're going to be exploring body language and how we can utilize body language to build rapport and influence as leaders, and also how we can recognize the signs of body language so we can better understand how we're interacting and communicating with people around us and how others are communicating with us, because so much of the communication process happens not through verbal communication, but through the nonverbal and the body language types of communication that occur. So we're going to unpack all of that, to talk about how we can do that more effectively, to be more effective and influential leaders as we lead out in our organizations and on our teams. As we get started, I wanted to share Martin's bio with everybody. Martin Brooks, an experienced communication coach and trainer in his consultancy practice, he applies his expertise in the reading of body language to help clients better understand others, as well as communicate more effectively. His body language analysis has been aired on the BBC, LBC Radio, and the Discovery Channel. His new product, Body Language Decoder, includes 50 illustrated cards that reveal what others are really thinking. I think that's so fun. You can tell us all about that. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation further?
No, just that, my focus has always been on helping people be more effective as leaders, as salespeople, as presenters, as communicators, and what is it they could do differently in order to be more effective. So that's kind of my focus.
Yeah, and it's a good focus. We all need it, right? And there's so much time and energy that goes into verbal communication. If you're in a leadership role, you're in front of people, you're making presentations, you're trying to inspire and influence and motivate, and you're having performance conversations, you're doing all these things, and there's all this verbal stuff. We also talk about written communication and how important that is, and not to take away from any of that, because of course, verbal communication and written communication is super important. We need to be effective at it. We need to hone that skill. But so much of the messaging that we communicate to others doesn't happen through the written word or the spoken word. It happens through body language, facial expressions, like all these nonverbal components, and which means we can really, if we're not careful, we can really short circuit our own ability to be effective. Even if we're saying and doing all the right things, but we're conveying these kind of underlying messages to people around us without even realizing it.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, that of course content is really important. What you're going to say to the troops, motivating the troops. If you're in a sales presentation, communicating convincingly to your potential customer, of course that is. And they will hear that content. They will see the words, the facts, the figures, but then they have to ask themselves a question. Do I believe it? Do I buy into it? Now, the content itself is not enough. So they'll be looking very much at the individual and going, am I getting those nonverbal signs that would back up, that would assert, that can give me confidence in what is being portrayed? Because do I believe it? Do I buy into it? I love the rapper Chuck D had this wonderful quote. He said that in order to people to buy from you, they have to buy into you. Do I like you, or do I trust you? Can I work with you? Whether that's in a sales environment or certainly in a leadership environment. The true leaders aren't behind people kicking them to go forward. They're leading, and they don't even need to look over their shoulder because they know their team is right behind them. They've bought into them. They're not doing it because they have to, because they've bought into them. So the leaders really need to understand that and really need to be able to communicate in a way that can assist that buy-in and not give out, say one thing with their words, but then their body language say something completely different. And then people at the receiving end are going, confusion, because I'm seeing this, but I'm hearing that, and these don't mesh. And what we talk about congruency. Does the body language, does the voice, and does the words, do they all line up? Do they all align to give that consistent message? And if it's not, that's when people start to think, not so sure. Those doubts come into play. There's a lack of buy-in, there's a lack of leadership, and then that shows in performance.
Yeah. Well said. And you've already started to lay out, some of those classic types of nonverbal cues But I'm wondering if you can walk us through more of like the most common pitfalls people tend to fall into when it comes to the nonverbal communication, and how that might inadvertently negatively impact, the trust issues and really the overall power dynamics and team dynamics going on within our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I've seen a lot, particularly in the virtual world, so the communicating over Zoom or any other platform, is that well, it's like we're not face to face. Therefore, does body language really matter? And even this whole should have camera on or camera off debate, and just makes me despair completely because yes, the pandemic has changed a lot of things, and communicating is always evolving. But at the end of the day, what is human beings' primary sense? It's our sight. It's what we can see. Now, our core psychology is not rapidly evolving. It's not B2B or B2C. It's P2P. It's person to person, and we need to see that physical science. So, if somebody is saying, for example, let's get into a little bit more detail. Say, well, this is what we really need to do, and there's a positive affirmative nod, for example. That's one thing. And the animation, if people are really excited, they expect to see a more animated face. They expect to see more animated gestures. And of course, that will follow through into how the voice sounds, because one of my favorite phrases is motion drives emotion. So if you are expressing yourself like this, using your hands, using your face, that will translate into the tonality of your voice and the passion and enthusiasm and excitement that you want to come through, that you want your team to feel, to go out there and face the challenges that they have to face. So it's that realization of what are some of the things that my team, my customers, my employees need to see from me. And even though we're maybe just on a little rectangle of Zoom, it's still so important. I even argue it's more important because it's easier for people to disengage. It's easier for people to be on a Zoom call and just just off screen, just to be kind of checking their emails or whatever, because you can't see that. So it's a greater temptation. So we need to make a higher effort to keep people engaged, to keep people interested. How do we do that? Don't ignore our primary sense, which is our sight, what people are seeing. I believe that's so important.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there are valid reasons why someone may choose to have their camera off in a meeting, or at least for a time. But what you're suggesting is maybe our default should be, rather than just automatically having the camera off, our default should be having it on. And then if we need to, we turn it off for a time and then turn it back on, so we can have that face-to-face even when we're doing it virtually. Something else I've noticed too, even pre-pandemic, and it's certainly still the case in face-to-face meetings, is it's become so common for people to just be sitting around, say, a big conference table with their laptops. And so they're in the same room together. They're all around each other, but it's almost as if they're not, because they're just kind of head down doing their stuff, and someone's up front speaking and people might kind of be paying attention, not really. And every now and then there's comments and stuff, but there's not really connection or engagement there either. And so my suspicion is you would suggest, okay, when it's time to communicate, it's time to look up from your computer and actually be with and respond to in real time to the people that are around you.
And see those other messages that you would literally miss if you're not looking. Look, let's be serious about this. Human beings cannot multitask particularly well. There are reasons why there are laws against texting and driving. Okay, there's a reason for that. We can't do those two things at the same time. That's why there's a law against it. We cannot possibly be reading an email from somebody in a computer and paying attention to all of the messages that they're giving out in terms of their voice, their words, and their body language. Let's just call it as it is. You just can't. So if you're going to choose to be paying attention to a screen rather than paying attention to the person that's speaking, the price is going to be there. You're going to be missing out on valuable information. And also think about this. We're communicating. Think about what that feels like to the person who's speaking, right? Think about that. Now, imagine you're in a room and there's 10 people in the meeting room and you're speaking. 9 people are looking at their computer screens. 3 of them are actually typing and replying, but there's 1 person in the room who's hanging off your every word, paying attention, nodding. When you say something, this is really concerning, they go, they mirror that emotion. Who are they going to feel more connected to? Who are they going to feel more has got their back? Who are they going to feel like, if there's somebody I want to give extra time and attention to, who's it going to be? It's a simple question. So don't do that. Don't put yourself at a competitive disadvantage. Never mind missing all of those other messages. Put the damn computer away, close it, give that person that eye contact, give that person your full attention. What Bill Clinton used to say, his 3-word strategy was be here now. If you're going to have a conversation with them, clear everything else away and zone in on them. And that was one of his key tools and techniques and how he built incredible rapport with people who had actually one-to-one with him. And I've met and talked to a number of people who have been with Clinton, and they just said that his ability to do that, to be able to tune into the person in front of them and ignore all the other chaos that's going on around them, just made them feel special. And that was one of his communication gifts. If it works for Clinton, as a controversial a character as he was, then it can work in business. Just give people that focus, give people that attention. You'll learn a lot more, you'll build better relationships, and you get a much better understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, Clinton's a good example. He's very well known for that, right? He really does have that rapport. And because of that, people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel important, and they just give more attention, and there's more buy-in, there's more connection. And all of that connection then leads to better commitment, higher levels of commitment, better outcomes. So if I'm talking about within my organization, and I'm saying I'm having a one-on-one with a team member, but I'm like kind of checking my phone off to the side. Do they feel important? Do they feel valued? Do they feel like you actually care about them? No, I mean, you may actually really care about them. You may, really desire to help them, but that act, even if it's just for a moment, even, your phone buzzes and you like, for 5 seconds, you go over and you look at it, that act is going to undo a lot of the other efforts you've made to try to show them that they're valuable and important to you and that you're trying to help them. So we just can't ignore those things. We may think, oh, it's not a big deal, that they'll recognize and understand. The power of those observations, though, is so strong that even if you say, I'm sorry, I just checked my phone, and they say, no, it's fine. Guess what? It's not fine.
Not fine. It's just, no, we're just being polite.
Yep. Well, very good.
Absolutely. I completely compare. And even with friends now, we when I get together, now we are getting together with friends who go, again, we actually turn our phones off, and put them away. So they're completely out of sight. So we can reconnect, because it is, you're trying, there's always that temptation to multitask, to be doing lots of things. And what we do is we fail at everything rather than succeeding at one thing. And that's what good communicators know. Look, forget multitasking, do one thing, be here now and do it really well. And as a leader, as a salesperson, as a communicator, actually gives you a competitive advantage that you can just give somebody that visual focus, attention, and buy-in.
Yeah, awesome. So we need to pay attention. And actually, I wanted to just comment too. You mentioned even in the face-to-face meetings, where people are head down and typing on their computer or whatever. I think not only are they missing all the nonverbal cues that could be actually super important as they're trying to just understand the politics around, not just the raw facts of whatever's being presented, but actually understanding people's commitment, buy-in to the message, and how it's going to impact with all the other initiatives and strategic planning. Like there's all these components, right, that are unspoken but are influenced. And so not only are you missing the nonverbal cues, you're missing the verbal as well. So, I mean, being distracted in a meeting and trying to multitask is really dumb, because you're really, what you're communicating to everyone around you is that this meeting's not actually that important. I have more important things to do, better uses of my time. And you're showing that through your actions. And so I get it. Leaders are busy. You're getting thrown into like all these meetings. You have to go from thing to thing to thing, and you're still trying to get your work done, and you're still trying to respond to questions and put out fires. And like, I get that. And you feel this pull, and that it's a hard thing to balance and to strike that, kind of a balance. But man, you got to learn to be present where you're at. Otherwise, you're just going to end up being ineffective in like every area.
Yeah.
And instead, I get it. Like you may have someone trying to contact you and needing your immediate attention, and you don't actually, you're not able
see
to
what's happening.
Yeah,
So,
no.
yeah.
So for those who are listening and not watching, you just demonstrated. You just started to hold up your phone and pretend like you're texting, and it immediately like gets me out of my thought process, right?
Immediately, right? Straight away.
And so we just need to pay attention to that and be with where we're at, focus on the task at hand, be with others around us in real time. Man, when we can do that, we can wait half an hour for the meeting to get done then go respond to that question of an employee or whatever. We don't need to interrupt things constantly. So, I guess maybe we're starting to beat a dead horse here, but I just see it so constantly, and I'm sure I do it as well. Like, I think we fall into the trap because we just feel pulled in so many directions. But if we can practice that self-discipline, it's gonna help us. Another thing that I thought we could talk a little bit about is really our nonverbal cues that we give to other people. How can we convey confidence, that we can be trusted? How can we convey our passions, our convictions? How can we convey all of that? Now, certainly if we're writing, we can try to be skilled in our writing. If we're speaking, we can practice and rehearse, and we can try to be skilled in our speaking. But most of what we're communicating is happening nonverbally. So how can we do those really impactful things in those nonverbal ways and do it consistently?
Well, I think there's two key things. First of all, is gain greater awareness of what our nonverbal skills are. And this is the piece of advice that I give to people, and they all go, "Ugh!" And that is record yourself when you're speaking. If you want to get a better sense of how to communicate with people, you got to get a better sense of what you're actually putting out there with your nonverbals as well. So the next Zoom meeting you have, record it. The next presentation you give in the boardroom, have a camera in the room. You can do it with your smartphone these days. You don't need a big camera. And start getting better awareness of how you communicate. Big part of my career as a presentation coach with leaders and senior salespeople has been not necessarily refining the message, but what message is your body language giving out? You're talking about passion and enthusiasm, but you're standing there with your hands in your pockets. I mean, come on, that doesn't convey passion and enthusiasm.
Or a completely blank face, right?
Or a completely blank face, yeah. The number of senior leaders who I've coached whose opening line has gone something along the lines of, "We can't tell you how excited we are by this new innovation." And you just think, oh my God, how long have we got? If that's our starting point, we're in big trouble. So the first thing is get a better idea of what your baseline is. What do you currently do? And and because that's self-reflection, you'll probably be like most people, like I am, and constantly critiquing my own behavior, going, yeah, don't want to do that. But then the second part is, what do you do instead? What do confident people do? So I've got a whole section in Body Language Decoder on confidence gestures, and that's one of them. That's called the parallel hand chop. You see people do this constantly. And Joe Biden's recent State of the Union speech, this is a constant thing that he does a number of times to assert that position. Also, previous President Barack Obama, one of his favorite confidence gestures was what I call the pinch of salt. This is the key thing that we need to do. We need to get that across. And of course, Clinton's famous hand confidence gesture was known as the thumb of power. So you put the thumb into the crook of the forefinger, and then you bring it down. This is why we need to do that. This is so important. So these are these two, certainly the thumb of power and the pinch of salt. These are softened fist gestures. So they're not aggressive. like the fist or the point, because again, a point is one finger away from a fist. So it's like the meanings are pretty clear, isn't it? It's an or else, So the softened fist, that a pinch of salt, this is why it's important, because it's softer. Then the assertion and the confidence is still there without the aggressiveness. Similarly with the thumb of power, with the thumb resting in the crook of the forefinger, but there's a softened fist there presented to the audience. So the chop, the pinch of salt, the thumb of power, these are three hand confidence gestures that we can make to really assert, we know our stuff, we're confident in what we're saying, and I want to make it easier for my audience to buy into, me and what I'm selling, whether that's a leadership vision or a product or a project that I want people to buy into.
Yeah, I think those are great. And I think also about myself, I've done a lot of that in the past where I've recorded myself, and I'm not a naturally charismatic speaker or presenter. I've learned over time to be effective. I think people tend to respond well to me, but it's been a learned process, and I'm still not as good as I could be, certainly. And one of the things that I've struggled with is like the energy in my face and in my voice, and just so I not even what I'm saying, but the facial expressions, and just the energy in my voice and not speaking in monotone and things like that. Right. So there's intonation and tone and like all these different things that you layer on to how we're conveying a message, that again will inadvertently undermine what we're trying to accomplish if we're not careful. But these are skills we can learn. Now, some people, it comes pretty naturally to them. Good for them. That's awesome. The vast majority of us, though, that's not the case. You have to work at it, just like you work at learning to play the piano or the guitar or whatever, right? You got to practice, record yourself, watch it, critique it, practice some more. Practice makes, I've never liked the term practice make perfect, but practice makes better.
For sure.
And ultimately, you're going to be better equipped when you're in those, especially when you're in those high pressure, really important situations.
Yeah. I mean, this sort of thing about where's your natural baseline, that self-awareness is really important, because that drives then what it is that you need to do next. And our self-awareness is a starting point. That's why people hire me. They go, well, I think I'm being charismatic in engagement. Am I? And I go, how do I break this to you? So for example, I mean, you talked about your voice. I mean, you've got a great natural voice to read bedtime stories and or be a professional hypnotist. It's lower, it's gravelly, it's got that real credibility to it. So you would have a fantastic career reading bedtime stories on audio files. You ever need an alternative career?
That's great advice. I'll have to look into that.
However, like you say, for that passion, for that enthusiasm, for that energy, if that's what you want to transmit, then noticing that your kind of range is kind of down there, you go, I need to be more expressive. I need to bring my voice up. And the fascinating thing you'll find is that if you move your body more, your voice will follow. Motion drives emotion. It'll actually change your voice. The mind, the voice, the body, they're not all separate things. They all interconnect and inter-influence each other. So you may want to think about then using your hands more to help your voice become more animated. It's very difficult for the voice to animate if the body's still. So that's one of the things that I've always done in my professional coaching career, where people are, what are the key things that they need to do differently, and then how they can actually do that. So then to come back to your point, it's not just about random practice. They need to know what they need to practice, where they are and where they want to get to, and how to bridge that gap in between the two. So that's where it's focused practice after sometimes uncomfortable constructive feedback, shall we say. But that's what they come to me for. They don't come to me for nice words. They come to me, how do I move forward?
Yeah. Well, Martin, this has just been fascinating. So many great pieces of advice here that I know I'm going to really carefully consider. I encourage listeners to do the same. Before we wrap up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you and find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Okay, thank you. Well, best place to find me is on the internet. My website, successthroughimpact.com. It's got loads of free tools and techniques and videos. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so search me Martin Brooks on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Of course, Body Language Decoder is available on Amazon. You can go find that on Amazon and order that. Get your 50 cards to help you figure out what people are really thinking. And in terms of my final word, I'd really say body language is the clues in the name, body language. It communicates a whole other language alongside what you're saying and how you're saying. And if you're really interested in being a better communicator, better able to convince, influence, and motivate people, you need to pay attention to what your body is saying, as well as what other people's bodies are saying to you. So raise that awareness, focus on it, find some things to move forward. That'll be my final word.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Martin and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.